Good evening. Welcome to this 90-minute webinar titled The Church's Engagement with the Police on Critical Incidents. My name is Edwina Peart and I work for the Quakers as their Diversity and Inclusion Coordinator. I am one of two chairs. My colleague Racial Swaby will introduce herself shortly. This webinar is being recorded and it's being hosted by the Racial Justice Advocacy Forum, the RJAF, a Christian church-based organisation working with and on behalf of Black and Brown Christians in Britain and Ireland on justice-related matters in the church and society. The groups that are part of the RJAF include Churches Together in Britain and Ireland, Baptists Together, Methodists, the United Reformed Church, the Religious Society of Friends, Quakers, Sam Sharp Project, Churches Together in England, Evangelical Alliance, the Movement for Justice and Reconciliation, the National Church Leaders Forum, the Ascension Trust, and the Salvation Army. I'll hand over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Edwina. So I am Racial Swaby. I am an education consultant. I am a leader at New Park Road Baptist Church, where I work alongside Reverend Sia Mathurin. I'm also the Regional Safeguarding Lead for the London Baptist Association. As we know, on the 5th of September 2022, the Metropolitan Police shot dead 24-year-old Chris Kaba in Kirkstall Gardens, Streatham Hill, South London at approximately 10 p.m. I was present on the night when this took place. I was on the scene when Chris Kaba was still in the ambulance. I live in the locality, and as well as serving in the church, I serve my local community in a number of different ways. The police subsequently found no weapon on his person or near the vehicle. Akin to all such incidents, the IOPC are investigating the death and have since declared it to be a homicide, and the officer involved has been suspended. I can just share from being present on the night that this incident has rocked the community in a number of ways. There's been a real disquiet, anger, fear and pain in the local community. There was already some distrust between the Black communities and the police, and this incident has only served to exacerbate these matters. The purpose of this webinar is to give you an opportunity to hear from a range of speakers who will discuss how churches can better respond to critical incidents such as the Chris Kaba event, as well as upskill its leaders and congregants to better engage with the police on issues affecting the Black communities in Britain and Ireland. I will now hand over to in a minute I'll hand over to my colleague Edwina, who will share the format, but I'll just share with you the panelists that we're inviting today to share their thoughts and speak about their ideas on this topic. So this evening, we welcome Reverend Sia Mathurin, Bijor Powell, Lauren Nguwu, Bevan Powell, MBE, Andy George, and Deborah Akinlowell. Those are our panelists tonight, and I'll now hand over to Edwina, who will share a little bit more about the format of this evening's webinar.
Thank you, Rachel. So let me take you through the format for tonight. Each of our panelists will be introduced by either Rachel or me, and they will speak for 5 minutes. As this is a webinar and not a meeting, only the panelists are able to speak, but we do want your participation. So I would like to encourage you to send in any questions that arise for you during the various presentations via the Zoom question and answer facility. And these can be questions directed to a particular speaker or for the consideration of the whole panel. We've actually allocated 40 minutes to Q&A, and we're aiming to answer as many questions as we can. We'll do our best to get through as many as possible, but of course we can't guarantee that we'll get to them all, as we have a lot of people on this call. So enjoy I'll hand over to Rachel to introduce our first speaker.
So our first speaker for tonight is the Reverend Sia Leanne Mathurin. So Sia is a close friend and colleague of mine, and she is the minister of New Park Road Baptist Church, which is the church closest to the scene of the death where Chris Kaba lost his life. Over to you, Sia.
Sorry. So ultimately, I'm going to start off by explaining how the church responded to the killing of Chris. Chris was somebody who was known to our community, not known personally by me, but known to the wider community. Rachel, who you've just heard from, knew him and he grew with her son. So he was part of our community. But in our community, every person, every young person is part of our community. So how did we respond? We responded immediately. And that was in terms of people from the church. Rachel, who was an active community leader and also a leader of the church, initially hearing the sirens and going immediately to see what was going on. Other people who lived in the community or part of the church family came out of their houses to see what was going on. This is not a black issue. This is a justice issue. This is a biblical issue. So there was many people out on the street that night and not understanding what has happened. So as a church, how did we respond the day after? Initially with shock. People that we know very well that had seen it play out and just couldn't really understand how this could happen in the 2022. Another black man executed on our streets. And what did we do? What would we as a church do? Well, a lot more than lament. First of all, we felt it was really important that we had a presence, that we were there that we stood and almost supported our community in a way that perhaps that was not seen by wider church organizations as to be probably the natural way forward. We wanted to just be ever present and just listen and just be there to not guide, but just to be there, to just stand with them and to just be in shock alongside them. Many people contacted myself, and Rachel was very much on the scene for those early days, along with other people from the church community, listening and just crying alongside. The whole community was affected, black, white, Asian, young, old, even young children going to school the next day very much felt a part of the whole, that they've killed one of our own children. Twitter was full up. My children here knew exactly what was going on. People were calling, initially asking, what could this really be happening? Could this really have happened in the society that we live in? And unfortunately, yet again, another person executed on our streets. So we responded by making ourselves available, by being there, so people could just come into the church and just talk to us, to just explain how they were feeling. And it was more than reporters that showed up that day. People just in disbelief, wanting to find out what had gone on. I know Rachel's phone particularly was off the hook, where people just wanted to say, could this really have happened? It took some time initially for us to understand that it was Chris who died on our streets that day. But for us, it was very important that us as a church, that there was a whole church response. And that was not easy, because there's still people within our church community that were feeling that, you know, he must have had a gun. It must have been concealed. And we're not going to go into the dynamics of that. We know he didn't have a weapon. But even within our community, there was disbelief. And church leaders were kind of known to be saying that church leaders were ringing us and saying, what could they do? Could they offer? And we're part of a church, Clapham Park churches working together. So we initially got on and said, look, this is what's happened, and come alongside us. Let's just get alongside the community. And the minister from St. Thomas's and St. Stephen's came out and was with us. The MP was there, ever present alongside us, and really understanding about, well, how best do we move this forward? What can we do? So it was just utter disbelief about what we could do. So people were talking to reporters, they were writing things down, people who would kind of came early after the event, kind of wrote down what their response was. And really, the importance of kind of getting the word out of what had happened and galvanizing people. Lots of people showed up, not just reporters. Lots of people showed up to get alongside in shock horror, just to stand there and cry. The scenes that particularly Rachel saw around those first couple of days were things that we would never want to be seen again. Young people just wailing, just feeling hopeless. And this could have been any of our children. This could have been any of our relatives or the church children. And we had to get the church to understand this was a community. This was a community that was suffering. So just in closing, in relation to what we did, and just to summarize what we did, we responded immediately. We got the word out to our church community to pray, but to do more than pray, to just be ever present. We watched what was going on. We watched how the thing were unfolding. We tried to find out who were the people in the community that we needed to speak to, who had more information, who should know about what was going on. And we then started to reach out to other people within our network, other ministers, other people from other faiths, from our ecumenical network, to bring people together to say, look, this is what's going on. Hence, within maybe 2 days, the RJA, the Racial Justice Advocacy Forum, contacted us and had conversations, and have since been fully on board with trying to get their views across and to try and say about this injustice.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Leanne, for your contribution and for your actions in meeting the needs of the community. I would like to remind everyone on this call that they can put any questions they have in the Q&A facility. I'd like to introduce our second speaker, Bijoy Pal. Bijoy currently heads up the Ascension Trust, which runs, among other programs, both the Street Pastors and the School Pastors initiatives.
Thank you, Edwina, and good evening, everybody. It's really great to be here. And Reverend Zia put it beautifully. We need to come together. The heart of the Ascension Trust and our work of street pastors, school pastors, and our other initiatives is relationship. We can't do things by ourselves, nor do we want to, because it's only in relationship and working together and seeing who has got the resources can we build that support network of providing that holistic care to our communities that the people who are hurting for whatever reason really need. The Ascension Trust started street pastors in Lambeth, in the heart of Brixton, back in 2003, where 18 volunteers from the local church, but not just one local church, from at least 5 different local churches said, we need to make a difference where people are vulnerable. They saw vulnerability due to alcoholism, due to drug abuse, and due to youth violence. And they said, we cannot go on anymore while our young people and people in our community are hurting and causing destruction. So let us come and bring the peace that we have in Christ out into the streets, but not to preach the gospel, but to be the gospel, to care, to listen, and to help. Through our practicality, we're able to showcase that something can be done by the church in the community. But the relationship didn't just stop at the different churches working together. The Street Pastor Network that started in 2003 could not have been possible if it wasn't for a relationship and support of the Brixton Police and also the local authorities. And the model we created, we called the Urban Trinity. And no street pastor initiative anywhere else in the UK or internationally can be set up without a relationship with the police or with the local authority. It is because the police have the know-how and the whereabouts of where there is vulnerabilities in our community. It is only through the information that they have can we make the difference that we need. And it is not for us as the church to make up the numbers of the police, but it's actually to provide an assistance and a support network where actually we can free them up to really focus on the serious issues and instances that they need to be in attendance of. And it's only through relationship that we are able to do this. Why do we want to work so closely with the police? Because their calling and their mission and their core is to support, protect, and bring peace to our communities. Now, if that is not the same message of the church, I'm not quite sure what is. And it is only through supporting those people that we can make a difference. But also we recognize that relationship is being able to build a bridge at both ends, to be able to hold a relationship that we have with the police, but also with the local community, is to recognize the power that we have in our voice. And that is to be able to speak truth and accountability and justice at both ends of that conversation. We can say to the police that we are aware of certain things that need to be addressed and to be challenged, but saying it with a voice of peace. We can also speak to the community to say the police are trying to do this, and it is only by recognizing the voice that we have that we can make a difference in saying this is all about coming together. It's all about supporting our incredible police officers, calling out some of the issues and the challenges that they have, but also recognizing where do we need the support, because all of these structures are there to build together. And so if we focus on what unites us as opposed to what divides us, we can move forward together and bring about the justice and the peace that we truly are seeking in all of this. Thank you.
Thank you, B. Joy, for sharing that wonderful testimony, so to speak. And just thank you for sharing that message of peace. You know, that really came across in what you shared. I'd just like to remind you all that as we're speaking, do not hesitate to place your questions using the Q&A facility. If anything comes to mind, just use that facility to formulate your questions and send it along to us. I'd now like to introduce our third speaker. Her name is Laura Ngugu. Laura is a 20-year-old graduate of International Relations and Development who currently works in marketing and project management for technology companies and organisations. She has worshipped at London Riverside Church since the summer of 2012 and desires to witness the transformation of churches towards a culture of active, radical social change, such as anti-racism. Over to you, Laura.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm actually 21. I turned 21 in May. Although I'm 21, I feel like a baby, and I definitely am. But I'm going to be talking about being young, Black, and a Christian. A little bit about hearing about the killing of Chris Kaba, and some things I think should be put in place in terms of having better relations between people, the church, police. So I'll start with being young, Black, and Christian. I think being young, Black, and a Christian can often be tricky. I know that going through situations such as racism can be really, really tough out there. But I know the church, for example, isn't void of that. And so it's painful to see these situations. And I know in certain churches, it's really hard to speak about these situations, because just like a Reverend Sia was saying, some people come out with, you know, well, he might have been carrying something or things like that. And there's often this denial or victim blaming of sorts. And for me, it's been pretty tough. I think that I'm quite cutthroat with those things. So in terms of me experiencing that, it's quite few and far between. But I know that a lot of my friends that go to different churches, they do experience situations like that. Upon hearing about his killing, I must say there was shock, just like Reverend C was talking about. However, at the same time, I think that we're sometimes a little bit desensitized to these situations. So often you hear about these things that you see and you're just like, wow, again and again and again, and you feel hopeless. You feel like there's nothing you can do. And especially as a young person, where oftentimes you don't really know about, you know, like policies that can be put in place, or the policies that are there. Often you feel that there's nothing else you can do. And so frankly, to be honest, I shut down from that because I felt like there was nothing I could do. But I think things like this, just like Bijo was saying, about community and coming together, those things do help. To feel that you have backing, that you have other people that think the way that you do and want to make a difference. Seeing things like Chris Kaba's cousin go on about, he seems quite knowledgeable about policies and following the story really meticulously, that also gives you hope into thinking that you can also follow that and you can also do something too. I would say in terms of better relations with the police, I know that initiatives like knowing your rights is a good thing. I know for me, I'm not really sure or aware of those things. I think those things should be more accessible to young people. I think, for example, in community meetings such as this, I think those things should be pushed a lot more. It gives you a lot more confidence in knowing how you should be dealt with. But also, I think that there is a knowing that in certain situations, even knowing your rights, there's a lot of things that maybe you can't combat still, because as we know, for example, in police custody, a lot of people have been murdered, regardless of them knowing their rights. So I think that, just like Bijo was saying, that it is a situation in which it has to be on both ends of the line, where we can educate one side, but without educating the other side, it kind of becomes void. There is no relationship and there is an imbalance. And we can know everything, but if on the side of the police there isn't anything done, then it tends to fall on deaf ears. So I would say, personally, I believe that there should be, and I know that some departments have talked about multicultural training and things like that. I think with multicultural training, it talks about the what. So, you know, this community does this and this community believes this, but I think there needs to be a more anti-racist approach to that. I think that anti-racism doesn't just talk about the what, but the why, a historic sort of backing to that. And I think that that will give a lot more police officers an understanding to build more compassion for people. I don't think that will erase it completely, but I think that that is a better start than just talk about multiculturalism. I also think that in the church, it'd be great to have that same kind of training for leadership. I know that there's a lot of churches that are multi-ethnic. And so things like that, I think that the leaders should get on board with anti-racist sort of training and understanding differences and understanding historical events and how they've impacted our world today. And therefore, when we come together as a community, it isn't just a surface level understanding of things. There is an effort to put things in place so that compassion really translates when they're talking and community strategizing as churches. And if there's ever a time where we can put a curriculum together, I'd love to be on board with that. I know that Racial Justice has come out as a book that's been co-written by loads of people from different denominations, loads of leaders from different denominations, edited by Richard Reddy. And I think that should definitely be on the curriculum. Should that ever happen, again, I would love to be on that. But I think that young people feel unsafe, they feel hopeless, they feel like they can't do anything. And I think just knowing that the community is better, knowing that the church is doing active things, active training, and obviously that funneling down into the church congregation as well, that would help young people feel like they can speak about these things. I know in some situations they feel like they can't at all, and they'll get, you know, pushback for that. So I think that's the way that we should go, in my opinion. But yeah, I'm done. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Thank you for sharing your perspective with us, for reminding us for the need for relationship and compassion. And can I remind this call to send in any questions you have via the Q&A facility. Our fourth speaker is Bevan Powell, MBE. And Bevan is the current Methodist Church leader on equalities, diversity and inclusion. He was also the former chair of the National Black Police Association. Bevan.
Thank you, Edwina. It's already been said by Big Joy and Lauren and others, the need for support in our local communities at a time of crisis. When a critical incident such as a shooting of Chris Kaba or some other incident, you know, a major road accident or something that brings trauma to our local community, that's the time that local churches need to play a significant leadership role in bringing pastoral care, reassurance, and to open up the path of communications. One of the major issues that we've been looking at as part of the Racial Justice Advocacy Forum is looking to provide tools to assist leaders in addressing some of these issues. And so what I wanted to propose and to start to describe to you all is a position where we can assist national leaders, have a national policy rather, and a national protocol that would assist local church leaders at a time of crisis, at a time where there's a critical incident, whether it's a major tragedy such as Grenfell fire or a shooting in the community or an incident with the police, that our church leaders feel confident that they have to hand the necessary information, support from other local leaders, ecumenical, and from the community at a time of need within the community. And so we have a number of proposals and are working on a number of initiatives that hopefully we will bring together a national protocol where within 48 hours of an incident happening, you know, local church leaders will know that they're given support. They will know how to contact local police or the fire brigade or whichever emergency services are involved. Now, in developing that, we've had support from the National Black Police Association in terms of working with local churches across the UK, in terms of informing local congregations of rights, as Laura spoke about, you know, young people understanding their rights, but also parents and grandparents understanding, you know, some of the procedures that the police have to go through. But it's not just about the police, it's about the local authorities, it's about the emergency services in general. It's about the political leaders in our neighborhoods. You know, we have crime commissioners now. How do we engage with them? How do church leaders have a presence? If we want to bring about change, and I think that church leaders have, our church community and our congregations are demanding change in the relationship between not just the police, but between a number of public institutions in this country. We saw some of the issues that played out during COVID and the disproportionate number of people from Black and Asian communities that died. The entire country suffered, but there was a disproportionate effect. And we now know that there are all issues around bias in our technology, in the way that algorithms work. We need to have a voice at the table, and churches have a role to amplify the voices of local people in their neighborhoods. We already have the support of a local university that's willing to work with church leaders in equipping them with understanding a whole range of legal aspects around the police and criminal justice system. And I think that's really exciting, because what we'll be able to do is, whilst we'll have material that equips leaders, we'll also be able to put alongside that our various perspectives in terms of our theology. So the theology that sits alongside justice, the theology that sits alongside peace. So that it's anchored in our Christian belief. So once we're engaging with the police or the emergency services, there is a central anchor which is our theology, our relationship with God and the way that we lead our lives. So what we're hoping to do is that those churches that would like to help us build a national protocol where we can respond to whether it's a national crisis, critical incident, and to build a system where local communities are reassured, where there is pastoral care, where there's pastoral care, where we provide spaces that within 48 hours, the police can come and speak to our communities and say what's happening, where the fire brigade can come or the local authority. The one thing that churches have is real estate. And if we work together, we can ensure that there are community spaces where we can have that communications link. We can have that place of silence. We can have that place of solace. We can have that place of prayer. We can support local victims. And we can do that in a very systematic way. And there are partners that will help us, such as the National Black Police Association, the Christian Police Association. And as I said, there are universities that are willing to come on board and help us put together a curriculum for church leaders. And I think that's really exciting that we can develop a national approach, irrespective of your denomination, and work with groups such as Big Joy's, the Ascension Trust, and the valuable work they do in terms of street pastors. If we work together, we can really bring about a change in our society and really comfort and bring peace to the communities that we serve.
Thank you, Bevan, for sharing a possible way forward and just sharing the idea about communities and how we really need to build those networks in order to move forward. I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Andy George. Andy is president of the National Black Police Association. He currently serves in the Police Service of Northern Ireland. Over to you, Andy.
Well, thank you very much. And it's great to be here with everybody tonight. Being president of the National Black Police Association is obviously a privilege. We've been working in the field of racial equality in policing for almost 25 years, and myself, Cabinet, and other members of our association stand on the shoulders of giants like Bevan and others that have come across us. But for us, we sat there for 25 years. We represent all officers and staff from Black, Asian and other minority ethnic backgrounds, and that is across the UK. Obviously, being a Police Service of Northern Ireland officer, we cover absolutely everywhere. So it's fantastic that we can kind of engage and hopefully collaborate with yourselves and how we can get our message across. So within that, there's a number of things that the NBPA actually do. We push internally, we support our members. So unfortunately in policing, even outside of critical incidents, if you're Black, Asian or minority ethnic, you're less likely to get through the recruitment process, you're less likely to get promoted, you're twice as likely to face misconduct. So there's a number of challenges internally, which we continue to give people support for, unfortunately, even after many years of trying to make policing a more fair and equitable society or service for all. So that takes up a lot of our work, but we also try to give strategic advice and guidance to senior leaders within policing and the other stakeholders. We get to meet the Home Secretary, we get to meet the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, the National Police Chiefs Council and the College of Policing. So we have the opportunity and the voice to be able to influence policy and procedure at the highest level, and we try to make sure that we are skirting the and being that conduit and bridge between the police and the communities that we serve, because even though we're police officers and staff members, first and foremost, ultimately we are community members and we care about the communities we come from. So it's us trying to fill that information void, because there's only ever been one Black Chief Constable in the entire time the police has been operating. So that group and majority think sometimes does forget about Black and the Asian communities, and it, not through intentional bias at times, but sometimes they just do not understand how our communities operate, function, and the community trauma and that intergenerational trauma which exists due to incidents that have happened time and time again, and we've seen all too many of them right now. The last thing we do is amplify the voice of the community, which is why we're here. We almost take a hit personally whenever we speak out. Being part of the police service, you are meant to kind of hold the line, you're meant to rely on your colleagues, you're meant to defend the police name. And unfortunately, we are often on the wrong side or on the right side, depending on what way you look at it, of having to push the police to be better at what they're doing. So that's a bit of a history about what the MBPA do, where we've sat. In relation to critical incidents, for me, whilst we talk about critical incidents now, and there have been a number of them, we have worked with the police around and with communities since the child queue, strip search, number of other bits with the Home Office around stop and search and the disproportionate targeting of young Black men in particular. We've also worked with the police service on the police race action plan, and again trying to make sure that it's fit for purpose, that it does what it's meant to. It deals with that systemic, process driven kind of outcomes which end up impacting us and our communities a lot more. So we're really doing what we can to kind of make sure that policing works better for all. But for us, critical incidents shouldn't be the only time that we work together, or it shouldn't be the only time that we are in the community. For me, we're chatting about trust and confidence. Trust and confidence is only built up over time. You know, and for me, we need to be in there. That intergenerational trauma coming from Northern Ireland, obviously legacy issues and the legacy of that period of sectarian conflict, which we experienced here, has taught me that communities cannot often move forward until you've dealt with what's happened in the past. And unfortunately, for some communities, the police are seen as protectors, and in others are seen as oppressors. So we really need to make sure that we right the wrongs of the past, to make sure that we move forward together. So that's one of the things that I would be passionate about working on. Know your rights is one thing that we could obviously do. We have that inside knowledge around policies, processes. I myself was a firearms officer for 10 years in Northern Ireland. I was an operational firearms commander, so I was leading the firearms teams on the ground. I'm a post-incident critical incident debriefer, so been through the post-incident procedures. So there's a lot of things that we could help fill that information void with. During critical incidents, and I think the church has a really big part to play in this. The police service, obviously, when we hit a critical incident, that trust and confidence that we have been lacking, or that's been really low, it's difficult at times for us to go in and get any message across. At times, sometimes police leaders almost are reluctant to pass information on. They're not quite sure on what way to work. So I think that's where the church, the churches and the National Black Police Association have a part to play in how we can go into communities, absorb some of that trauma as an incident's unfolding, and then work with the communities moving forward to try to build up that trust and confidence in the police service, but also make sure that the community have the information that they need, and that they are able to funnel and to vent the frustration and the anger which they're feeling at that time direct to police leaders and across the board. And I think we can work together to make sure that the right questions are asked to the right people and at the right times. And I think if we do that, then there's an opportunity for us to change the policy and procedures, to change the outcomes moving forward, so that we are not dealing with critical incident after critical incident after critical incident. The ethos of policing is generally around prevention first. So the more incidents that we can prevent hitting a critical level, for me, that's a success. And I think the ethos and our values were always around one voice, strength, and unity. So I think that unity is clear now. We want to work with you. We want to have the same voice. We want to push that voice towards police leaders. And I think policing at times doesn't always move until there's that external scrutiny. So it's how we can work together to empower and enable our communities to kind of deal with these incidents in a lot better way. So looking forward to working with everybody as we unfold.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andy, for your insight, your clarity, for reminding us of intergenerational trauma, and also reminding us of the need to work together, and that the police are there to prevent harm, not just to deal with it when it has occurred. Thank you. Again, can I encourage everyone who has a question to put it in the question, the Q&A facility. Our final speaker for this evening is Deborah Akinlawan. Deborah is a detective constable in the Metropolitan Police within its family liaison and disaster management team. She has also headed up the Metropolitan Police's Christian Police Association. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here today. I just want to thank all the previous speakers. I agree very much with pretty much with everything that's been said. But the thing that I wanted to really focus on today, but first of all, before I do that, actually, just a bit of an introduction. So I am currently the head of the Christian Police Association within the Metropolitan Police. I've worked with the police for 28 years. I started off in Lambeth and was around when street preachers, or the street pastors, sorry, was formed up. And I can remember working at Brixton, and I think it was Ruat Ministries came to Brixton when there was a lot of trouble and offered to stand outside the station and pray outside the station for the officers there, which was something that really moved not just the leaders there, but actually the police officers as well. It really touched people's hearts, and it changed the dynamic at that point in time between the officers and the community. And I want to kind of just, first of all, just thank Reverend Maturin and New Park Baptist Church for just being that extension of the love of Christ to the community in the time when there was so much pain, anger, people searching for answers. We, the church, are the ones that we can't give the answers, but at least we can bring peace. I was reading today Matthew chapter 5, where it talks about blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. And in various places around the world, police officers are called peacemakers. That's who we are supposed to be. That's who 99% of us joined the police to become. And we want to continue that. And within the Christian Police Association, we want to be that conduit, that link, that bridge between the Christian community, whether they be black, brown, white, whoever, because the Christian community is a wide variety of cultures. That bridge, literally as I stretch my hands out, touching both the police and the community, and to bring that healing however we can. And so, as we always say, as part of the Christian Police Association, what can we do to help? How can we be that bridge? Will you invite us to your churches, to your youth groups, so that we can break down the walls of distrust through talking it out, asking the difficult questions, answering the difficult questions, helping communities to see both sides. We get to see you and you get to see us. You get to see the us behind the uniform. I can tell you now that on the 5th of September, when the news broke, that for many of us in the CPA, literally, I can talk for myself, that you know, when the bit where you feel literally your stomach just drop and you don't know what to do with that. And I remember calling up members of the CPA and going, look, we need to pray for our community because we're all part of the community. And 40 people at 12 o'clock on one of the subsequent days met up and we prayed, covering everybody, family, community, press, the police officer, the police officer's family, the officers involved, the IOPC. We covered everybody in prayer. Yes, we have to engage with the police, but let's also remember that police need prayer, that everyone is affected, and we as the church are that arm of the love of Christ that can be extended. We want to break the whatever it is that is blocking that relationship between us and the community from being restored. On the 1st of September, we held a prayer meeting asking for various church leaders, pastors, to come to the top of Scotland Yard and to pray. And the reason why we did that was because we had a new commissioner starting, and it was, okay, this is time for a new start. Let's pray into this. Let's pray for the right leaders. Let's pray for wisdom for the leaders. Let's pray for the right people to join the police. Let's pray for the wrong people are taken out or exposed and chucked out. Let's pray for the police service that we want to see. Because there is power in corporate prayer, and there's 50 people turned up to pray, which was a real encouragement. And I know it's not just prayer, there's the doing also. But I believe that as Christians, we have that added edge. And when we do things, but we see things from a spiritual point of view also. We dig into the roots, we uproot the foundations, and we pray into those and uproot the foundations that are bad and begin to plant good things in terms of the words that we declare and speak and pray over the police service and over the community. In terms of critical incidents, there are so many ways that communities can help. I know Grenfell's been mentioned. I'm not going to mention that too much, only because there's a public inquiry going on. But even something as recent as the gas explosion in Thornton Heath, where people were displaced from their houses, churches opened up for residents in that area who couldn't go back to their houses. Churches opened up to feed them, to water them, to comfort them in that time, and that's what we need. There's a document that the National Christian Police Association, that was published by the National Christian Police Association a couple of years ago, called Faith and Policing Together. And I'd encourage you to look up that document on the CPA website, because it talks on there about the several things that we can do as a community to get involved in critical incidents and to help communities to build those relationships, to build those bridges, to be there in the community, to help us as the police with those critical incidents, before we even get there, what we can do, how we can pray, how we can get involved, how we can engage, how we can even work for, how we can volunteer for. There's so many things that we can do, and there are so many organizations that bridge that link that you can use as a way in. So I'd encourage you, please, if you could look that up, it would be really a really good thing to do, so that we just want peace. We want to change. We want reconciliation. We want restoration. We want the trust to come back again. Yes, it's going to take time, but step by step, we will get there. Please keep praying for the leadership. We pray for every leader. We pray for our governments. We've got a new government now. We've got a new king as well. Pray for our leadership, that they make the right decisions, and that the decisions that they take, however popular or unpopular, will be effective, that people will take to that change, whatever that change is, so that we build back the relationship that we want with the community. And just to end off, I don't know about my time, but just to end off, I just want to talk about something that happened back, I think it was early noughties or late 90s, when the Evangelical Alliance called a service specifically to pray for the police. And there was all sorts of church leaders there from all over, and we came to Westminster Chapel, and it was full of people. And Sir John Stevens, who was the commissioner then, got up to the lectern, and they had asked him to say what he wanted from church leaders. And this is what he said: "You've asked me, what do you want? What do I want from you as church leaders in regards to the police? I ask you for three things. The first thing, pray. The second thing, pray. And the third thing, pray." Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. I think what was really important in what you said today is just reminding us of the power of prayer, and that's something we can always do in order to help and support our communities. Okay, so thank you. I'd just like to say a big thank you to all of our speakers. We're now going to move on to the second section of our evening, where we will now have some questions and answers. So during this session, some questions will be spoken directly to panel members, where some will be thrown out and panel members can answer as they see fit. Just a reminder to keep sending your questions in. We have got quite a few questions now to answer, and we'll do our best to answer them as best as we can, but we will apologise in advance if some of the questions we don't get to. And also to remind you, this is the first in a series of webinars on racial justice, so do look out for some others that will be coming in the future. So our first question will go directly to Reverend Sia Leanne, and it's from another Baptist minister in Birmingham. So it's from Richard Skinner, and Richard says, please could Sia say a bit more about what being present really meant in this situation. I'm interested in why people who never engaged with church came into the church building after what happened, and why did people in the community contact you as a Baptist minister in this situation? Thanks. That's directed at Sia.
Thank you, Richard. So just to answer your question, being present for us was very much about just making ourselves available. And it kind of ties in with the second part of your question in relation to about being a Baptist minister, that I'm a mum and I'm a grandma and I'm a Black woman, and I'm part of the community, and my children and my grandchildren live in the community, some of my children live in the community, and it's about being part of the community. I'm very much into the multi-faith approach. I feel that sometimes as Baptist ministers, we need to be more open in the way of trying to be more inclusive. I think people will come to our church because they very much sometimes see it as a community place. We have community events there for all the community, regardless to what their theology is, or even if they have a theology at all. So we're perhaps seen as a more go-to place, and people within our community, people like Rachel, I hate to keep calling her name, are seen as community leaders who are at the forefront, who sit on different kind of organization. So we don't just do church, we be church. We're committed to being church and being present with the community. Richard, I hope I've answered your question. Rachel, have I answered both parts of Richard's question? Can you just?
Yeah, I think. Thank you. You've done. Yeah, you've answered it well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can second that, Reverend Celia. You've answered the question.
Thank you.
And our next question comes from an anonymous attendee, and it's directed to Joy. And it says, you spoke about the police a lot. How can confidence and trust be built between the police and the community?
So thank you for that question. I think one of the key things to build trust with the police is to get in the room where they are, to be able to have honest and frank and respectful conversations, be that for us as church leaders or members of our congregation to go and meet the police on their ground, or to openly invite them into our space and say, we would like to have a conversation with you, or find a neutral space, see if you can find time to take them out for a coffee. Relationship starts with saying hello. And then from there, you can be able to create a space where you can listen to what some of the pressures are, what some of the concerns are, what some of the challenges are. And like Deborah said, actually, sometimes it's being around where they are operating and praying for them, praying with them, and saying, actually, how can we help? Because that in turn will open up the police to be able to ask the same questions of the communities. How can they help? It's only by creating the space to listen first that you can really find the root cause of the issues. And that's where trust can be built and grown. A really good example of this, I'm a Croydon boy, I'm a South London boy, have been my whole life. And currently there is a group that meets in Croydon called the Croydon Community Action, where they have every Friday, I think between morning and lunchtime, they have a meeting where it is faith leaders, it is the police, it is community groups who are all in the same room together. It's chaired by Anthony King, who's an incredible man, does a really good job at holding all of those voices. but it's creating a space where everybody has an equal voice and everybody can grow together and share together and be together. And one of the successful things that has happened with that group is over the past 9 months, there hasn't been a single fatality of knife crime in Croydon. That's powerful, but it's only because we work together and there is a trust that says we're on the same page here, we have the same goals, let's move and share our resources and grow together.
Thank you, Joy. That was a great response and really clear and detailed. So thank you for your answer. Our next question goes to Laura, and it's from an anonymous attendee. And the individual says, "Thanks for your presentation, Laura. Do you know any young people who want to join the police?"
Hi. Yeah, thank you for liking it. I do know a few. I know one of my closer friends, he did want to be in the force, but he doesn't want to anymore. But yeah, I do know some. I'm not sure if they necessarily are going to follow through with it. I don't know what their future plans really are, but I know there's of course hesitancy because, you know, of the things that they'll be, I guess, privy to, or the experiences that they'll have within the force, etc. But yeah.
Okay, and I just have a follow-up question for you, just based on what you said, what you shared earlier. What support do you think young people need, particularly from faith groups?
Wow. Yeah, I think of course the community aspects I was talking about before. Just leaders that are aware, are committed to not having, or I guess re-educating themselves or uncovering truths, because I think a lot of I mean, the core of racism is miseducation, and I think people that educate themselves, it's a lot easier to speak to those people, to feel that you're safe in those environments, that you can fully speak your mind, and that when you do speak, there's a common understanding of what you're talking about. So I think even Devan was talking about sort of that preparation for these situations, so preparing for young people to come to you. But I think in that preparation, you also need to do some of the work as well. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it from me.
Thank you, Laura. I've got a question for Bevan, and the question is, as well as upskilling church leaders, is there a role for ordinary members in helping churches to respond?
Absolutely. I think the starting point, and one of the things we'd like to do in the Racial Justice Advocacy Forum, is to conduct an audit of what's already been done. So, you know, B. Joyce spoke about the street pastors and what they're doing. There are many churches that are doing great work, both they're young people and church leaders themselves that are engaging on a range of issues that impact the local community. So the answer is yes. So, you know, I think if anybody wants to get involved in any future events or any of the training that we're developing, I think, you know, just contact the Racial Justice Advocacy Forum. But the key thing to this is about partnership. And as I said, you know, there are a number of groups that want to work together to build a national protocol where church leaders are supported, where there's peer support, where there's support from, whether it's National Black Police Association or local universities, or input from the Christian Police Association. At the end of the day, we're supporting our neighborhoods, the people in our local neighborhoods, that we're able to give that support at a time of crisis or a time of critical incident, that we're there to give that pastoral support, but also to be a key agent of change.
Thank you, Bevan, for your response. Right, our next question goes to Andy George, and the question is from a Derek Morgan, and the question reads: what does the MBPA think about the new police chief refusing to meet with you, Andy George?
It's a tricky one, I suppose. Disappointment's probably the first thing that comes to mind. You know, it's not Andy George as an individual that they're snubbing. It's 25 years plus of working in the racial equality field, supporting over or almost 5,000 members around a number of different issues, let alone the experience I've had in Northern Ireland as well. So I think for us, it wasn't just a snub of myself, it was the association as a whole. And I think there is a background around this as well. I think London and the Metropolitan Police and policing circles often dominates and sometimes taints the national debate. I think there's almost sometimes an elite attitude within London policing that because they police so many people, because they make the headlines so many times, and they do work in one of the most challenging environments in policing. But whenever you take it per person, per population, police services across the UK work around the same thing. We all have so much to learn from each other. We all have so much to develop and support each other on. So I think for us, it was really disappointing that we weren't in a position to offer, a perspective from a national viewpoint, to give that external and outside evaluation of what our members and our communities have been telling us, so that policing can get it right and make sure that that trust and confidence that we all chat about increases, that things get better, because policing cannot operate without that trust and confidence. We rely on the public to work with us. Whenever somebody's a victim of crime, we rely on them telling us who done it, working with us to go through to court. The same with witnesses, people to hand over vital evidence. So the model of policing in the UK is policing by consent, and unfortunately we have started to kind of drift from that in the last few years. So that's really, from the association point of view, it was very disappointing, very disheartening, and hopefully not a sign of things to come. We're always there to support. This isn't about individuals. For me, we're still willing to meet with the Met Commissioner, with a senior leadership team, to get things right. So that offer of support will always be there, because it's not about me, it's not about anybody else, it's about making things better for everybody.
Thank you, Andy. I have a couple of questions for Deborah, and one is very direct, and it's that you mentioned the Faith and Policing Together report or publication. Can you remind us of the website where it can be found?
All right, it's www.cpauk.org.
Thank you. And the larger question is, can faith groups support Black and Brown Christians in the force?
Absolutely. So I'm going to use my experience here. So I've been in different churches at different times, and there are certain churches that I would be in that I wouldn't feel comfortable saying what I do, which shouldn't be the case, really. For me, this is my personal thing. Going to church is like my oasis. It's my place away from all the rubbish that I've had to deal with during the week. And I think that's the same for quite a few people. So they just keep quiet about what they do. Because what you don't want is someone coming like, oh, I got a parking ticket the other day, that kind of thing. And, I've just come to church with my family, do you know what I mean? So we kind of keep quiet. But I would like to say that if church leaders know their congregation and know who's part of their congregation as the shepherd, as it were, I think it's a good thing to just make sure that they are noticed, that they feel at home sharing who they are and what they do, so that if they're struggling, if we are struggling, if we've dealt with an awful case, in the introduction you talked about me being a family liaison disaster management team. I'm a family liaison officer. I've been family liaison officer for, countless homicides that still get to me now. And there was times in that I couldn't go to church because I serve in church and I just couldn't talk about it because I didn't think people would understand. I mean, yeah, they might pray over you, but sometimes you just want to offload. You don't want to traumatize people by offloading. So you don't know who to talk to. That's why you come back to, and that's part of why the CPA is there, because we have that shared experience. But it would be really great if Christians can come to a church as a place of safety, a place where they can just relax and put down the walls and just be vulnerable without people looking at them, and support them in times when, especially when things like George Floyd happened, and you know it's going to affect people. Talk about it, broach the subject. If the person doesn't want to talk about it, fine, but at least they know that that topic, whatever it is, was broached, and that you are there for them when they are ready to talk about it.
Thank you for sharing that, Deborah. So the next question, I'm going to open it out to the full panel, and obviously I don't expect everybody to answer, but if you feel this is one that you can contribute to, then please do, as I think it's a question that many people, you know, belonging to church or faith groups may be asking as well. So this question comes from Angela Rayner, and it says, there was a critical incident in my parish about 500 meters from my church in which one man stabbed another to death. Our church is open nearby, but I wanted to know if we could offer pastoral care to the family or hold a vigil, and what sensitivities we should be aware of. By the time I'd got hold of the police, it seemed far too late, as I had to wait for their 24-hour press line. Is there a line for church or faith leaders to call to ask about making interventions sooner? Anybody have any contributions to that one?
Can I say something, Ms. Bevan? I want to bring everybody back to the Stephen Lawrence family. When Stephen Lawrence was murdered, it was the Methodist Church. It was the Lawrence family were Methodists, and it was the church that gave them support. I don't think you have to wait for permission from the police or anybody else to give pastoral support. If that person is in your church or is in your neighborhood, you know, you're giving, you have a leadership role to play as well in your neighborhood. Part of our mission is to be in the community. So we're praying for the community, but we're giving that support, pastoral support. So from my viewpoint, the answer is, you know, if the family wants that engagement, they will let you have that engagement. If they want a vigil, I mean, it's about the mutual respect, because some families will say, no, I don't want a vigil. You know, I'm fine. I don't need anyone to pray for me, etc. But I think it is about not having any barriers, being able to outreach to our community, whoever is hurting, whoever is traumatized. The church should be there to offer that pastoral support, that assistance, you know, a place where they can come and pray, or to be prayed for, or a place of silence. But at the end of the day, it's their call. If they want the support from the church, I think the church shouldn't have any problems in reaching out. But it's the call of the family and the individual.
Anybody like?
I just want to, sorry, yeah. If I can come in off the back of what Bevan shared. Yeah, he's absolutely right. It's about recognizing actually our churches are much better connected than we may be aware of. Even if it's not somebody who goes to our church, there will be a church who knows the individual, knows the family, and has a connection. And we'll be able to say, let's come together, let's work together to get alongside that family. Let's get alongside the people who are impacted, because it isn't just the family, it's their friends, it's the wider community. It could be colleagues, it could be neighbours. And so it's about saying, actually, let's use the connections that we have, or let's build connections if we don't have them, to find out actually how can we support. There is no harm in asking, what can we do?
Thank you. And I see Sia, your hand's raised. Over to Sia.
I just wanted to talk into this because I learned some lessons in relation to this, in relation to what happened with Chris. And there was going to be a demonstration that was not organised by the family very soon after Chris had been killed, and that was a demonstration in Brixton. And lots of people were saying, you know, there should be some kind of vigil. It's really important. So I thought, okay, there's a demonstration. Let's also offer up to the community some kind of vigil, so people could just come into the church, they could pray, they could just be still, they could just have somebody to talk to and just open the space out. Perhaps I used this word wrongly so for the vigil. I put it out there. The family weren't living in our community at this time. They don't live in our community anymore. They kind of spoke with community leaders and said they didn't want, with our MP, Bel Ribeiro Addy, who's been fabulous. They spoke and said, no, they didn't want a vigil at this time. And we as a church said, we totally respect that it's their call. You have to work with the family. They have to feel like they're in charge. They've lost all their power. They feel totally out of control. They have to feel that they're in charge. But what we also wanted to do was just make the space available. So we said there wouldn't be a vigil, even though we put it out there. But we did say if anybody wanted to come into the church foyer, if they just wanted to come in the church grounds, we would sit and we would listen to them and we would make ourselves available. And myself and some other church leaders and also Bel Ribeiro Addy, our local MP, were there to meet people, and some people did come. But what you always have to remember is work with the family, let them lead. Any vigils must come from them. It's not about us, it's about them.
I'm just going to add to what Sia said, and subsequently the family did contact us as a church and asked and requested for us to hold a vigil and lead a vigil further down. So it was really about working with the family. Sorry, Deborah, did you have your hand up?
No,
Okay.
I did, but everything that's been said, it is about the family, and even our family liaison officers are told, ask the family. I mean, counselling is offered, but if usually where people are of faith, they prefer that it's their pastor or the church or someone that they know and can relate to is on the same wavelength. They prefer that. Go with what the family want.
Thank you. I also have a general question for anyone on the panel to tackle if they feel able to. And that question comes from an anonymous attendee, and they ask, what gives you hope in these situations? Is there anyone from the panel who wants to address this? Beatroy, I can see your hand.
So for me, hope is a little bit of a mantra for myself, and I've used it as a hashtag called "There is always hope." But when I've looked deeper as to what hope is, it's helping open people's eyes to the part they have in bringing about a restoration and a peace, helping open people's eyes to the part they have to play in making sure that actually our communities work and our communities can function. Hope is about helping open people's eyes to the voice they have and the value they have, to be able to encourage people to speak up and to not be quiet, to have courage to share their feelings and their emotions, and also the opportunity and the freedom to bring about a lament, to recognize that there has to be a healing, but from that healing, there can come joy and there can come peace, there can be that life in all its fullness. It's helping open people's eyes that we are not in this alone. It's helping open people's eyes that there's a narrative that we need to change and transform that brings about a holistic sense of we're in this together. Hope is about recognizing that we are united, and what unites us is stronger than what divides us.
Thank you for that beautiful answer. Is there anyone else on the panel who might?
I'll happily come in on that one. For me, the thing that brings me hope after incidents like this, although they are, really tragic, is how the community, how it brings conversations like this together. I think it's tragic that it takes something like the Chris Kaba shooting, like Child Q, like things like that, to bring us all together, to have us around the table, bringing things forward. But when you lose hope, you lose the ability to move forward. You lose the ability to find solutions. You lose the ability to work together to stop this from happening again. So for me, what I hope out of a lot of this is that we have a longer term strategy, that we are not just constantly reacting to big incidents, that we're working together on how we can actually prevent them from happening in the first place. And that's through society, through churches, through the police in general. The police, I always say community engagement is crime prevention. And I think working in communities, being in communities, that for me is what solves crime, prevents harm, which builds that trust and confidence in the police service, because we are there to work with the community, not to enforce, not the kind of put down, but to work with the community and to solve those problems that are persistent. So for me, it is that hope that we can work together to prevent needless lives lost and that trauma that young people all too often experience.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Reverend Leanne, your hand is raised.
I just wanted to say hope for me was when we, myself, Rachel, and the people from our church went along to the protest and stood with thousands of other people from black, white, young, old, standing together. And it was totally peaceful, where we talked about the issues, we were real about the issues, and the family had a list of things that they wanted to achieve, which in order to hold the police accountable for what has happened. But there was calm, and it was not just that time. Then there was and then the other protests, we were there. As a church leader, it is so important that we journey alongside our community. And I saw so much hope that day, hope from young people who were feeling desperate, the fact that they were able to come together, the fact that there was lots of people who were from several different postcodes who just came together, and it was a peaceful event, and we came together in solidarity and in unity to say, Black Lives Matter, and there needs to be an end to this, and we need to change the trajectory of the journey that we've been on, and we can only do that by working in partnership and working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Sia. Thank you so much for sharing that message of hope. Well, I'm going to ask a question, probably, and I'm going to pose this question because there's been many comments around this theme. So the question is written by Richard Zipfel, and he asks, are such incidents a sign of a systematic problem in the police? Now, we've only got a couple of minutes, so I'm going to throw that out to the panel. So please do keep your answers short and succinct. So are such incidents, so the ones such as what's happened with Chris Kaba, a sign of a systematic problem in the police?
Yes. Short and succinct.
I'll come in the back of that as well. Our conference title for next week is Institutional Racism, the Facts Behind the Headlines. And I think for me, everything we deal with, we work with some amazing individuals within policing, but they are part of wider systems and processes. They then become part of the culture which works against Black communities. And I think we have to admit that there is something in the psyche of a majority of police officers which puts Black people as more violent, more aggressive, more involved in crime. And I think we have to tackle that issue. We have to admit it. We have to deal with it, and then we have to move forward on it. But that this constant cycle of incidents coming up and us trying to almost justify what's happened is wrong, and it shouldn't be happening.
I want to come again off the back of that. Yeah, most definitely. There's no two ways about it. It's 100% systematic. I think within, if you like, the bricks of policing, there's always been racism, classism. I think if you look at the history and how it came to be in this country anyway, which is why I stress people educating themselves and learning more so they can understand it when they come to these kind of conversations, is that these systemic problems are essentially built into policing in Britain and of course other countries. So 1000% is systemic. And like has been talked about, it's about uprooting that and planting something new. And that could only happen if we come together, we educate, we pray, and we do things together, and on all ends of whatever spectrums there are, whether it's the people, whether it's police, whether it's government, whatever it is, but 1000% systemic, yeah.
Thank you, Laura, thank you. Right, I think we are now coming to the end. So to wrap up, we are going to ask our panel member, Bevan Powell, to give a few closing words and take us through some next steps.
Thanks. I think the key thing that we've spoken about tonight is partnership and the opportunity to work together with mutual respect. I'd like to highlight an event that's taking place on the 26th of October, where we have the Commissioner for Community Safety from the United States, from Minnesota, a very experienced person, John Harrington, who has worked very closely with Black communities in the United States and church leaders. And he is visiting the UK for a week, and there's an opportunity for church leaders to meet with him to investigate and build on the conversation that we've had tonight in terms of, how do we develop these relationships in a way that brings about trust and confidence, that we support our communities, that we support the police, but also hold the police to account. What's his experience in the United States? So that will be an excellent event taking place on the 26th of October. But the key thing tonight is really encouraging church leaders to work with us in the Racial Justice Advocacy Forum to build this national protocol. I think working together and having a response to support our communities and leaders is critical. The one thing we can say is that another critical incident will happen. We don't know where or when, but unfortunately it will happen, but we can be prepared and we can respond and we can give each other mutual support.
Thank you, Bevan. We have a few moments before we actually need to wrap up this discussion finally. So I'd like to offer all of our panelists 1 minute to just say anything they'd like the whole group to take away, to make one final point. And we can start with Bijoy.
Thank you. As the leader of the Ascension Trust, I would love everybody to look at actually what can they do to get out into their communities. Whilst I would love to encourage everybody to become either a street pastor or a school pastor, the key thing is get involved in your community. Look at the vehicles that are out there to look at how can we be seen, to be present, to be visible, but also to be engaging with what our community needs. Who are the people that we need to speak to ask the question, how can we help? Does it mean looking at other vehicles and mechanisms as how to impact our community, such as food banks, CAP, and other societies who are in our community to say, what can we do to help bring about healing, to bring about that peace? But also to look for your community police officers to say hello, to make them know that they are valued, that they are cared for, and that you want to get alongside them. Ask them the question, how can we pray with you? How can we pray for you? Let them know that the church is there to care. But also just to recognize that actually we all have a part to play, and the small part that you can play will make a big difference in your community. So my encouragement is to get involved in whatever way that you can to bring about that small bit of peace that you're called to.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Laura, is there a final word that you'd like to say?
Yeah, Thank you for this whole situation right now. This is amazing. I love the fact that we can get together and all different types of people. We can just talk about loads of things. So I think just in short, from a young person's perspective, I think that we mirror what older people do, as much as people may not realize that or see that that's the truth. And as much as we feel angry or frustrated and hopeless, I know that older people do too. And sometimes it is hard to always expect that older people will be on go all the time. So I do appreciate that. However, what you guys do, we see it and we'll mirror that. So, you know, if you're educating yourself, we'll educate ourselves. If you're praying, we'll pray. You know, if you go out and do something, we'll be there too. And it gives us inspiration and thoughts for what we want to do now and in the future, and what it looks like to fight injustice as the church. So yeah, everyone just do their part and keep your eyes out and peeled and listening and seeking to do better. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Reverend Cieli Ann?
I just wanted to say Chris Kaba's life matters. And going forward, we need to just remind ourselves that this is just not going to go away. You know, it's all very well as galvanizing support and saying this is terrible thing has happened on the 5th of September. But that there's lots of other families like Chris Kaba, sadly. And, you know, I hope that there'll never be another family that faces that trauma, but I'm not confident at this time that there won't. So going forward, that I very much see that the church has an integral role in equipping people, equipping other churches. Let's come together as a kind of ecumenically to say that, you know, working together, working with the police, make sure the right people from the community have not just only have a voice at the table, but have a seat at the table. Let's come together as one community, multi-faith, whoever, you know, whatever, let everybody be represented so we can make a difference together. You know, there's that very famous African saying that it takes a village to raise a child, and we at New Park Road, we are that village. And, you know, what if it happens to one, it happens to all, and we stand by, and we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop shouting out and supporting the family. We'll just continue to do that. And so let's just carry on together. Let's not just leave this as a webinar and just say, okay, well, it was all very nice. I'm sure we won't, but let's just carry on having a debate, carry on fighting for change and transformation. But to remember that this conversation here started not just with Chris, but people like David Olawale, the young man in Leeds who lost his life in 1969, was hounded down by the police. Things need to change.
Thank you. Andy, do you have a last word?
Yeah, my last word is really just to let you all know that there are individuals, there are organisations within the police pushing from the inside to bring about the changes which you are desperately seeking. We understand the issues which you have. We will always speak that truth to power. We will always give an honest assessment of where things are, not to put the police down, not to erode that trust and confidence, but to make policing better. And that's the ultimate thing that we need to get to. All too often, policing, you are taught to justify your position. We are too defensive. We are too dismissive of what the community tell us. We just need to understand that there are reasons that people continually tell us that things are wrong, that the police are policing disproportionately in different communities, and that's something that we are committed to working with you on. Our ethos and our slogan and motto is one voice, strength and unity, and I think that's the power that has kept the MBPA there for 25 years. That extends not just to the association, but to everybody that we work with. And if we all say the same thing from different angles to police leaders, then they have to listen, and that unity for me really will drive change. So we are more than happy to work with anybody to drive that change, and we are here pushing from the inside to help and support on your behalf.
Thank you. Deborah, you have a few seconds left for your final words before I hand back to Rachel.
Okay, I'm just going to say two things. Make that three. What can we do to help? 2, Laura, I would love to put out to you an invitation to you and your friends that wanted to join and change their minds. I want to meet with them. I want to bring a group that will meet with them and let's talk it out, because we need good people with a passion and a heart for policing that want to do the job, to join the job. So if there's something we can talk about, let's do it. And then my third thing is keep praying.
Rachel.
Thank you, Deborah. So we've now come to the end of what we call a very wonderful evening. We would like to thank you for joining us this evening for what has been an evening of outstanding presentations and stimulating discussion on what is one of the key issues in our community today. We'd like to thank our speakers for leading our conversation, and again, a wonderful responses to the questions that were posed at them. We'd like to thank you, the attendees, for all those who sent in their questions, for taking the time out in your evening to attend this webinar. And we do apologise to those of you whose questions were not asked. Please do finally look for other webinars in this series that CBTI will be hosting on racial justice in Britain in the future. We are Rachel Swaby and Edwina Pert, and we would like to wish you a good evening and encourage you to stay safe. Good night.